Thank you so much for that. He hated teaching over Zoom because he loved teaching in the classroom. We have a few people who have come here from a very long way, and we'd like them to come and say a few things. Ann Mitchell? Glad to have you.
I'm glad to be here.
I'll let you introduce yourself.
Sure, I'll use this one.
Use the handheld.
Especially, yeah. Seems like this is the thing to do.
Hi, I'm Ann Mitchell, and I came over from Albany, New York this morning. I worked with Steve in the 1970s at a little Quaker summer camp. Is this better? Sorry.
Yep.
I'm pretty loud anyway. A Quaker summer camp, like imagine this like shrunk down to like 10% of the size, but it's this lovely clearing as you walk up a road that you have to walk up because there's no way to drive to this camp. And you get there and there's a little clearing, and in the clearing there's 7 teepees. And everyone's living in the teepees. These are kids, 12 to 15. Steve was in charge of food, and he was really, really good at it. He figured out stuff they liked, stuff that he wanted them to learn to like, and he kept the whole thing moving. He was also really good at solving problems. So one problem was you're out in the middle of the wilderness, you're far away, you're not going to take your, how are you going to stay clean? So he figured out this way to make a shower out of a stream, but it was really, really cold. So he thought about it for a while, and he said, we found this old radiator. So we're going to hook the radiator we're going to build a little stone fireplace, put the radiator there, we're going to build a fire under it.
Wow.
You can have a hot shower forever. I mean, it doesn't ever stop. It just keeps feeding the wood. So he would solve problems like that were, interesting. I think the other thing that I really need to say about him is that he was very, he was learning psychology as he went along with these young boys, and he learned a lot from hanging out with them. One of the other problems they solved was everyone wanted bread, but we're in the middle of we're on a mountain in Vermont. We got no way, and we don't get deliveries of food. We had a food shelter, and all the food that we were going to have for the summer was in there, and it was, it was like hippie food, beans and stuff like that. And this was new to a lot of those kids. So we built a wood-fired oven and began to bake bread. It was amazing. So he was very good at paying attention to what the problems were that were sort of on people's minds, and then getting everybody together to solve them. Like, he didn't solve them on his own. He would get everybody together and say, okay, so how do you think we're going to build this wood-fired oven? And they'd think about it, and they'd talk it through. And so he was an amazing, amazing person. And I don't know, there's nothing else I can say except that I love him and I miss him, and I know you all do too.
This ring I have on is actually something he showed me once from that camp, and it's got a little teepee on it, because he wanted to remember the time when, in his life, when all he had and all he needed was a teepee, and he used to say every now and then, just kind of quietly musing, I used to live in a teepee, and now I live in a house with 3 fucking bathrooms. What am I doing with them? Next, Nancy Robinette, a very old friend of my father's.
So I understand I've known Steve the longest because we were junior high school together in Arlington, Virginia.
Ice cream cone.
And we went to, I have to tell you, Arlington is a community that has all kinds of renaming opportunities. We went, Washington and Lee High School is now called Washington Liberty High School. Lee Highway is being changed to, I think, Love Highway. That's being considered the loving couple that were, I believe, from Virginia. I think Steve would get a big kick out of that. It's so great that we're meeting in a park because my earliest memory of him is a park midsummer party where we were teenagers. A group of us had a picnic, like Laura Nero's song, Stone Soul Picnic was our favorite song, and it was the first time I drank wine, I believe. And Steve was my first male friend, not boyfriend, but male friend. And this group, you know how precious that group is, that you meet at that age and that you bond with, if you are lucky enough to, as I was. So Steve was always this welcoming presence, calming me all the time, and I think enjoying me, and then later my husband, who shared his wry sense of humor. And there was one very special time as well where my husband was having a series of health issues, and he would come over every evening and play his accordion for us. And it was a long summer, and he was completely there for us, and I think he really enjoyed us as well. I hope so. I know so. And for my son, who has a memory of Steve helping him go sleigh riding, and so all the times that I've crisscrossed in my life with Steve have been special. That big smile. And then meeting Adrian later, and Matthew and Zoe, and I came up here once to see them. But the last conversation I had with Steve, he asked me about my marriage, which he had been there for, and which, my husband had these issues. He had schizophrenia, and Steve said, we've always talked about these issues, and there were great times too, weren't there? And I said, yes, of course. And I loved him for saying that to me, because I believe it's the last thing we actually talked about. So thank you, Adrian, for letting me say some words.